Tech Cocktail Conversations, candid insights from startup founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders from around the globe.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about more about how you got started and what kind of drove you to get into what you are in and how you kind of blazed your own path doing that. So, I mean, the book Startup Mixology talks a lot about turning ideas into action. So I'm curious, what was, you started with CNET, a while back. What was kind of the thing that got you going? Like, what made you want to do that?
Yeah, so back in 2004, I had just graduated from college in Boston, and I moved out to San Francisco because I wanted to work in technology. And at that time, San Francisco is still like really the place to go if you want to work in this industry. Mm-hmm. And I had gone to school for audio radio production, but I minored in new media studies, which was barely a thing at that time.
Right.
It wasn't really.
That was really early, 2004. I mean, that was early.
It was pretty early still, and. So I got to San Francisco and I found an internship posting on Craigslist.
Oh, wow.
For an audio production intern at CNET, and I applied, and I was just totally, blown out of the water when I found out that I had gotten the job. And what I thought was really funny, I was originally working on audio production for a lot of their B2B stuff and whiteboard videos, but my boss at the time was working on a new corporate podcast for CNET, which turned into Buzz Out Loud.
Oh, really? It was just a corporate podcast. Like what?
Well, I mean, it was really the first corporate podcast.
Okay.
There weren't a lot of big companies doing podcasts at the time.
Right.
And so I kind of thought of it as like, oh, this big company wants to do podcasting. Podcasting's for the little guy. This was like pre-iTunes days. This was before podcasting was really a thing. But because of my love of audio and also of new media, I had been very interested in podcasting as a media for sharing information and for learning about new things and finding like-minded people. So I jumped on that right away. When my boss decided to leave, I took over as the producer for the show, and everything just kind of took off from there.
And it did really well. I mean, it's still out there, isn't it?
No, they actually had their last show, I think it was about a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I haven't listened in a while, but I remember early on that was the go-to place to find out what's new and hot and happening. So you've covered a lot of things too, right?
Yeah, it was a daily tech news show. And so every morning we got into the studio and went over all the major stories of, everything that had happened after the show from the day before, basically until airtime that morning. And at the time we weren't doing it live. I think later in the years they started doing live broadcasts, but we just recorded everything at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I would publish, hand edit the XML feed and everything myself. That was before like FeedBurner was really around.
Wow.
You could just like post up MP3 files. So I thought I was kind of a badass about that for sure. But yeah, it was a great experience, and I think that was the first time I really got to learn about internet communities and how powerful they can be and how much change they can kind of affect. And we really started tailoring the show around the feedback that we were getting from the audience, and that's definitely something that I still do to this day.
So how big did that get? I mean, I don't know the actual numbers. Was it pretty?
It was, I think, when I
felt like it was everywhere.
Yeah, before I left, I don't know what the numbers were.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I left in 2007.
Right.
But they were definitely in the upper teen, 90,000, 100,000 on good days and stuff. So it was reaching a very wide audience.
Very interesting. And so, did you then? I mean, you were obviously taking a journalistic approach to covering news too, right? So, what were the things that kind of caught your attention? Because I mean, as a startup, right, there's a lot of stuff out there. Like, how did you pick and choose what was going on to cover?
Well, we were mostly news focused. Okay. So if there was a big story that was happening in the news, we were always going to cover that first and foremost. But we all kind of had our own roles within the show. So I was the total Apple fangirl for like a really long time. And I don't consider myself as much of a fangirl anymore. I use Apple products, but
back
that was
then,
kind of my
Apple
beat.
Was like, they weren't what they are I mean, they were kind of going through that revitalization.
The iPod was
getting going.
Yeah, I remember specifically the first thing I talked about on the show was the Mighty Mouse. That was the first time I ever opened my mouth on the podcast was to correct Molly about something she said about the Mighty Mouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's
terrible,
a good memory.
Terrible mouse that, though. Did not go well for them.
Okay, so you did that. Then you did, MP3 Insider, Crave, Prize Fight.
We did a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, you did a lot of podcasts. So what are some of the things you learned along the way? What did it teach you about yourself, I guess?
It really taught me, and this is going to totally sound cheesy, but to talk about what you're passionate about.
Right.
I mean, and that's definitely something I still do today is, all the shows that I do, all the projects that I take on, all the companies that I advise for, I work with them and work on them because I'm so passionate about that product or that subject matter.
Right.
So, you know, my main show right now is a sci-fi fantasy book club. And, you know, I've been doing that for 8 years.
Wow.
And you can't really do a podcast for 8 years and not be excited about the subject matter.
Right.
And all the companies I advise for, I've been really passionate about as well. So it goes hand in hand. If you're going to be bored about what you're talking about, you're not going to be an effective person working on it.
So how did that show particularly come to, you know, turn into something? Did you come up with that idea? Was it like, hey, I really love this?
Sword and Laser?
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sword and Laser, yeah.
So Sword and Laser got its start because I was leaving CNET, and Tom and I wanted to continue doing a show together. He was my co-host on Buzz Out Loud, Tom Merritt.
Yeah.
And we both love sci-fi fantasy. I was more the fantasy nerd. He was more the sci-fi guy. So he's the sword laser, and I'm the sword. And we wanted it to be like a kind of podcast where it feels like you're at a pub with your friends, having a pint, talking about your favorite books. Sometimes the author is there talking about them with you. And that's just kind of how we've gone for the past few years. We just published our first short story anthology.
I saw that. So that came out like beginning of July?
It came out in April.
Oh, April.
Or
I got
May?
my dates mixed
Gosh,
up.
I don't remember. So we published a short story anthology of 20 original stories, mostly from audience members.
Cool.
I felt like there was such a huge pool of talent of people like writing in all the time and listening to the show that I wanted to bring them, you know, put a spotlight on them for a change. It worked out really great. We had thousands of submissions, a lot of slush reading that we had to do. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy with the outcome, and we're going to do another one within the next 2 years.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you're a big reader then?
I'm a huge reader.
How much do you read? Like, what's like average weekly?
I have to read 3 books a month or so for book clubs, and then everything else is just gravy.
So how many book clubs are you in then?
I'm in 2.
Okay.
So I host 2 book club shows.
Okay, so one we just talked about. What's the other one?
Am I allowed to? Can I say the title of it?
Oh, heck yeah,
All
you
right.
can.
The other one's called Vaginal Fantasy.
Okay.
And it's a romance sci-fi fantasy book club and podcast as well.
Interesting.
Erotic paranormal romance, yeah.
Paranormal. Yeah, I never thought we would talk about.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Paranormal romance. Here. Okay.
There's a lot of it. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Huge industry.
Did not know this.
Well, we wanted to like niche game it.
Right.
You know, so there's so many women out there who love to read.
Yeah.
And men too. I mean, it's not only women listen to the show, but for sure. And we wanted to make people feel comfortable talking about the books that they loved.
Right.
You know, and if those books happen to be Cthulhu erotica, then you know, by all means.
So do you only read those types of books? Because you said 3 a week or 3 a month?
My husband Ryan teases me because I don't think I've read a nonfiction book in the past 10 years.
Wow.
So it's pretty much all sci-fi fantasy at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you also...
I'll read your book, though.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I
I'll
was
read your
going to
book.
say,
Okay.
of course, Start a Mixology. That's top on the list at this point.
Is there any paranormal romance?
Of course there isn't. No, there might be. I don't know. You have to read it. There are llamas. There might be llamas. Yeah, there's llamas.
I'm not into llama romance.
Oh, shoot.
All right,
well,
sorry.
then it might not be as interesting to you. But
in the sequel.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about, so you devised some startups, one of which is About.me, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later with Tony. But you also are an advisor to Goodreads?
Yeah, I was an advisor for Goodreads before the acquisition. Yeah.
Okay. So how did that happen, and what were you doing? Like, what does that look like?
I think actually Tony made that introduction to Otis a long time ago. I'm not sure if Tony knew that I was a big reader or if he just saw that I was using Goodreads a lot. But Otis Chandler, the founder of Goodreads, reached out to me and said, I see you using the product a lot. Obviously, you're a fan of books. You know, it would be great if you could come on as an advisor. And I jumped into that one head first because I am such a passionate reader.
Right.
And Sword and Laser was using Goodreads as their book club platform.
So you're already a user, like a passionate user.
Yeah, I was already a big user.
Okay.
And Sword and Laser is now, I think, actually either the first or the second largest book club on Goodreads.
Wow.
Through no help of theirs. I mean, it's just, it's worked out so well as a platform for us. Also because the authors use it as their main landing page for a lot of the stuff they work on.
So they drive things back to it.
Just to use the word synergy, I'm sorry.
It
it really works out very well for everyone.
That makes sense. Okay, so you also cover gadgets too, though. You like gadgets?
Yeah, I don't really cover gadgets on from a professional
Just
point of view anymore. I used to
right.
do tons of gadget reviews
Right.
and back in the CNET days and for Texilla
Right.
over on Revision 3. But now I mostly do it just as a consumer.
Right.
And the same with video games.
And you have your own following. Like, let's just put that aside. Like, where you've already you could do a review and you've got a pretty large audience.
I should be doing them more probably.
Right,
but
right,
yeah. I talk about stuff that I'm using.
Right.
And so if someone approaches me and says, hey, I've got this product,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to check it out? If I know that I'm never going to use it, I'm like, sorry, this isn't really in my wheelhouse. Like, I'm just not going to take a thing because
Right.
it's there.
Right.
It has to be something that works with my lifestyle and works with my day-to-day flow of
Right.
stuff that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So have you, like, what's the most interesting thing you've seen lately that kind of gets you going?
I'm still really excited about Oculus Rift.
Oh,
The Oculus Rift.
yeah.
Yeah. Especially curious to see how they do under the Facebook acquisition.
Yeah.
But it's, I'm really interested in immersive gaming right now.
Okay.
It's something that I think as a child of the 80s, we've all been conditioned to really expect by now. We want virtual reality.
Right.
We want to have like a VR world. We want to be really inside our content, inside our media, our video games, our movies, our television. 3D glasses haven't really done it for me.
No.
I actually get sick using them, which
really?
tangent.
Actually, isn't that something that happens though with
to women?
Yeah.
Yeah. So women out there, if you have trouble with 3D, it's not your fault. It's actually the way your brain and your eyes work. So it's not you. It's everyone else. But yeah, I love the potential that the Oculus has and products like it because I think
I've heard that's made people sick too, though, like because it's so real.
Yes, it has made me sick as well. But they say the next iteration is supposed to be a lot more easygoing on that aspect.
Okay. So right now, what is the main thing that you're focused on the most? Like, what's the
Well, right now I'm doing 2 TV pilots.
Oh.
So those are definitely the things I'm focused
Oh,
on
wow.
most
Okay,
right
I didn't
now.
know that.
We already shot one, and one's in pre-production.
Cool.
So yeah, they're actually both pretty STEM related.
Really?
Yeah. So that's
Can you
what
Can you talk about it or no?
So one is it's a STEM related show for kids.
Oh, cool.
And so I don't want to get too much into
Right,
it. But we shot the pilot already over in Chicago.
Cool.
And I'm really excited to kind of get it in through edits and see like who's interested.
Right.
If anyone's out there, call me. And then the other one is still really early stages, but it's definitely a little more intense.
Is this the first TV stuff that you've looked to do, or have you done other stuff?
No, I've done some hosting. I hosted the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Oh, wow.
On BBC America.
That's a big.
And that was really fun. I've done some stuff with the Fusion Network, of course, with G4 in the past. Is there anything else big I've done? I just said that. Way to listen. So yeah, I've done some hosting opportunities, but these will be the first 2 big, like full-time.
Wow, that's great.
Jobs, yeah.
And that's been a passion of yours to get on TV, or has it been?
It's not the end game. No,
Right.
I mean if these shows don't find a home on television, there's no reason why I wouldn't bring them to an online provider.
Okay.
Like a Netflix or a Hulu or even an Xbox Live. There's so many opportunities now to get interesting content online. I think it would be short-sighted to just say it has to be TV.
Okay. So let's say there's somebody in the audience that wants to kind of follow your path, follow their passion, and get into their own TV or even online kind of stuff. What advice would you give them?
I really think the only advice I can ever give, and the thing I keep saying to people throughout the years is, you have the ability now to just do it.
Right.
So if you want to be a YouTube star, it's hard, it's a lot of work, but you have the means to do so. It doesn't cost a lot of money. There's very low barrier to entry. All it takes is for you to be passionate about something and to have, to put yourself out there, to be comfortable putting yourself out there.
Right.
You're going to get thrown a lot of shade, I mean, that's just part and parcel of being visible online. But if you're really excited about the subject matter, you should be doing a podcast, you should be doing a YouTube show, you should be writing, you should be blogging, you should be, tweeting up a storm. Just you gotta get your face out there.
Okay, so speaking of tweeting up a storm and getting feedback, you got a bunch of followers, almost 1 million or over 1.5 million Twitter followers?
Like 1.7.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you probably get a lot of random stuff, right? How do you get through that? Do you check it? Do you keep track? What do you?
It's basically a full-time job.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I try to respond to as much stuff as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, on Google Plus it's 2.7.
Wow.
Facebook is lower, but Facebook's a lot more discussion happening.
Right.
It's, I think the feedback I get on Facebook and Google Plus is actually really valuable.
Right.
Because people can write like huge paragraphs.
Right.
They don't need to just be limited to 140 characters.
Right.
So the discussions there tend to go on. I know people kind of laugh about Google Plus.
Right.
But the community there is fantastic still.
Pretty diehard, yeah.
They're really into Google Plus, man.
Right.
I mean, they've stuck it out.
Right.
So I consider that a very valuable part of what I do online. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. I think it's time to make a drink. And I didn't get your... I don't know if we got your...
I already have a drink, though.
I know, but we've got a mixologist over here.
Hi.
You're a host. Do you want to go and like see what he's up to over there?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
You want me to interview him?
I'm lazy, apparently.
You
And
just have
go
90
ahead.
million degrees in here.
Oh, yeah. I should have thought of that earlier. You've got the mic,
Let
so
me
you
put
can...
my mic pack back on because it fell off.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Okay, I'm good.
There you go. What's
It's
he up
almost
to?
like I do this for a living.
Yeah, you might have done this before. What is he up to over there?
What are you up to?
I'm up to whatever you like to drink.
All right, so what do we have the ingredients for? It looks like you have mint for muddling.
Mojito.
Mojito, all right. We've got, what is this, blood orange soda?
Good job.
It's been dubbed the unicorn fuel.
Why?
I don't know the story behind it. If somebody wants to enlighten me.
What's that? What was the question?
Why is it called unicorn fuel?
Well, basically, it kind of ties back to some of the things in the book, right? Like, sometimes it's unicorns and rainbows, and other times it's not. So I feel like you should probably drink that fuel to keep you going.
All right, so that was my favorite cocktail, I think, so far. Can you show us how to make it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the unicorn fuel is just a mix of half and half Prosecco and blood orange vodka, or blood orange soda.
We can add vodka. If
Yeah, we
if you
should.
are
We
into
probably
that.
should.
Blood orange vodka. That
Blood-
would make it excellent.
So half and half.
Or 2/3 and then just a little splash of that, however strong
Okay.
you like it. And then a little garnish of an orange slice to make it nice and pretty.
So nice orange slice. So we'll be serving
And
this
then there
later
we go.
on, so you can get your own. And you've already had some.
Another one. Okay.
There you go. They
All
don't
right.
they don't
Do you
skimp
want
here.
this? Does
You
anyone
got
want
a
this one?
couple.
You want it? All right.
There you go. All right. See, that's the benefit of sitting in the front row close to mixologist.